Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy Guthrie, missing day 40. This, as we learned tonight, the FBI returns to a particular restaurant and interrogates restaurant workers in the last 24 hours. This as the use of retinal scanning is considered for the porch guy that we know kidnapped Nancy Guthrie, and the FBI now conducting shoe casting tests on potential footprints found at the crime scene. And tonight, APB All Points Bulletin for a perp wishing to have his full sleeve of tattoos removed. Tonight, joining us, an expert. Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us. Investigative reporter Dave Mack joining us tonight. Dave Mack, I want to hear first about the FBI going to a Mexican restaurant and re-interrogating restaurant workers. Now, it's my understanding there are two restaurants in question. One is a restaurant to which we can attribute the glove that had DNA that was found a little over 2 miles away from Nancy Guthrie's. That restaurant in play, and there is the restaurant that was featured in the Today Show segment. Let's see that as we're talking. It was called an Arizona Homecoming, as I recall, and Savannah went home to visit her family, and while there, she and her mom and I think Sister Annie went to their favorite Mexican restaurant. And this is that segment, Savannah's Arizona Homecoming. It's the El Charro Cafe, and this is my friends at Today. I believe it's this restaurant, not the one connected innocently, I might add, to the glove found near Nancy Guthrie's home. Is that right, Dave? It's this restaurant, the Today Show restaurant?
That's my understanding, Nancy. The Today Show filmed Nancy and her family eating out and having a good time as a family, but the FBI investigators were back there interviewing workers who were present the day the Today Show they were filming, and they're asking them specific questions about people that were there the day of the shoot. Was there anybody acting oddly? Was there a fan that seemed overly, trying to contact with Savannah and touching and talking? There was a lot of asking about what took place that day, who was there, and how did they act? Anybody weird? Anybody stand out? That's what they're asking, Nancy.
Before we begin, I want to ask you something. If you're watching right now, comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I read the comments on every video, and it's always incredible to see how people from all over the world follow these cases. And if you're interested in real true crime investigations and updates as they happen, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next developments in this story. Now let's talk about the update that has people paying attention again to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. During a recent discussion, legal analyst and television host Nancy Grace spoke about new investigative steps authorities are taking in the ongoing search for answers in the case of Nancy Guthrie. The case has now stretched on for weeks, and investigators are continuing to examine every possible lead that might help explain what happened. According to updates discussed during the broadcast, authorities have expanded their forensic efforts and brought in additional expertise to review evidence connected to the timeline surrounding Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. One of the most significant developments involves a specialized team connected to the FBI's Training and Forensic Analysis Center in Quantico, Virginia. This type of team is often brought into cases when investigators want to carefully examine physical evidence that might help reconstruct events. In this situation, experts are reportedly working to analyze a shoe impression connected to the area investigators have been studying. Creating a cast of a shoe impression can sometimes help determine the type of footwear involved, the approximate size, and whether the impression matches anyone connected to the investigation. But that's only part of what has investigators returning to the case with renewed focus. Authorities have also gone back to re-interview individuals connected to a restaurant that plays an important role in the timeline investigators are building. When detectives revisit witnesses or employees at a location like this, it's often because they want to clarify details, confirm earlier statements, or determine whether anyone remembers something that didn't seem important at the time. And sometimes, investigators say, those follow-up interviews can reveal small details that become extremely important later. Another topic discussed during the update involves a man who has been referred to by some observers as the porch guy. Investigators have been examining images connected to this individual and considering advanced identification techniques, including retinal analysis of available imagery, to determine whether the person can be identified. At the same time, authorities have issued alerts about reports of a man who may have been seeking to remove or alter a full-sleeve tattoo that could potentially help identify someone connected to the case. Detectives are exploring whether that report is relevant to their investigation or simply unrelated information that surfaced during the search. Right now, investigators continue to follow multiple leads, and officials are urging anyone with information to come forward. The big question people following this case are asking tonight is simple. Could these new forensic efforts finally help investigators understand what happened to Nancy Guthrie? Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from, and share your thoughts about this investigation so far. Do you think these new leads could bring investigators closer to answers? And if you want to stay updated as new developments happen, make sure you subscribe. Because in the next part, we're going to look more closely at why the restaurant connected to the timeline has suddenly become a key focus for investigators again. So in the first part, we talked about the new forensic work investigators are now pursuing in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, and how Nancy Grace revealed that an elite team connected to the FBI's Forensic Training Center in Quantico is helping analyze a shoe impression that could be connected to the timeline of the case. But another development that has investigators returning to old ground is the renewed focus on a restaurant that plays an important role in the sequence of events detectives are trying to reconstruct. According to the discussion, investigators recently went back to speak again with employees who were working there around the time Nancy Guthrie was last accounted for. When detectives revisit witnesses in a case like this, it usually means they are trying to re-examine details that may not have seemed important in the early days of the investigation. Sometimes witnesses remember something new after time has passed. Other times, investigators compare earlier statements with new evidence they've collected. Even small details, like what time someone arrived, who was present, or what someone might have noticed that day, can help investigators refine the timeline. In this case, the restaurant has remained one of the key locations detectives are studying, because it sits close to the period investigators believe may hold critical answers about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. But that isn't the only lead investigators are examining. Another point that has attracted attention is the individual sometimes referred to in discussions as the porch guy. Investigators have been reviewing images connected to this person and looking into whether modern identification techniques could help determine who the individual might be. One method mentioned in discussions involves retinal analysis of high-resolution images. While techniques like this depend heavily on image quality and available data, forensic specialists sometimes use advanced visual comparison methods to help narrow down identities when traditional identification isn't possible. At the same time, detectives are reportedly examining information connected to a man who may have attempted to remove or alter a full-sleeve tattoo. Distinctive tattoos can sometimes help identify individuals connected to investigations, which is why authorities often ask the public to report information about unique markings. Right now, investigators have not confirmed whether that report is directly connected to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. But detectives say they are exploring every lead that surfaces while the investigation remains active. As the search continues, law enforcement officials are urging anyone who may have seen something unusual or who remembers details from that time period to come forward. Even information that seems small or unrelated can sometimes help investigators connect pieces of the timeline. The renewed forensic work, the re-interviewing of witnesses, and the continued examination of possible identification, clues show that the investigation is still moving forward. And for people closely following the case, the question remains, will one of these leads finally bring investigators closer to understanding what happened? Before we continue to the next part, comment below and tell me where you're watching from. It's always fascinating to see how many different places people are following this investigation from. And if you want to stay updated as more developments happen in the Nancy Guthrie case, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next part, where we take a closer look at why investigators believe the shoe impression being studied could become one of the most important forensic clues in the case. As investigators continue working to understand what happened in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, authorities are carefully reviewing several leads that have recently gained attention. During a discussion of the case, legal analyst Nancy Grace explained that investigators are expanding their forensic analysis and revisiting important parts of the timeline. One of the key developments involves a specialized forensic team connected to the FBI's Training and Research Center in Quantico. Experts there are working to analyze a shoe impression that investigators believe could be connected to activity in the area being examined. By creating a cast and studying the pattern, size, and depth of the impression, forensic specialists sometimes determine what type of footwear created it and whether it could match someone connected to the investigation. At the same time, detectives have returned to a restaurant that plays a role in the timeline surrounding the case. Investigators have been re-interviewing employees and individuals who may have been present around the time authorities believe critical events may have occurred. Follow-up interviews like these are common in complex investigations because people sometimes remember additional details after time has passed. Another aspect investigators are reviewing involves a man sometimes referred to in discussions as the porch guy. Authorities have been examining available images of the individual and considering advanced identification techniques to determine whether the person can be identified. While methods like image comparison and visual analysis depend on the quality of available footage, investigators often explore these options when trying to identify someone seen near a location connected to a case. Authorities have also issued alerts related to reports about a man who may have attempted to remove or alter a full-sleeve tattoo. Distinctive tattoos can sometimes assist investigators when they are attempting to confirm identities or locate individuals who may have information about an investigation. At this stage, officials have not confirmed whether that report is directly connected to the case, but detectives are continuing to evaluate all information that comes forward. The continued forensic work, witness interviews, and examination of possible identification clues show that investigators are still actively pursuing answers. Officials say that solving difficult cases often involves carefully reviewing even the smallest pieces of information and comparing them against the timeline investigators are building. For now, authorities continue to encourage anyone who may have information about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance to come forward. Every lead is being examined as investigators work toward understanding what happened and bringing clarity to the case.
To play here too, Nancy, is enhancement of the photographs at the scene so you can try to identify those shoes that individual has on from any number of those spots and see if you can get back to a specific manufacturer.
From that incredible technology, let me jump to the possibility of a retinal scan. That's been brought up in many quarters. Straight out to Christian Hammond, you met earlier tonight, artificial intelligence expert, professor of computer science, Northwestern University, director of the Center for Advancing Safety of Machine Intelligence. What is a retinal scan? Because you've got a great shot of the perp's eyes looking directly into her door cam.
So we really do have a collection of little signatures that we carry with us all the time. Our faces, our fingers, our literal signatures. But one of them is the structure of our retina, which tends to be unique. So if I can have a really great image of my retina, later on in terms of identifying me, another image of my retina can be matched against it, and we can see it's me. The problem is that to get most retinal scans, you need deeper imaging. That is to say, you use infrared light to get the right photo. So that gives you a target, a thing that you are looking for. So if I've got retinal scans of a bunch of people, then I can take their retinal scans later and match against them. But if I don't have that retinal scan, then what am I matching against? And then there's the image of the perpetrator while he's looking at the camera. It's a powerful image, but it's not enough. And there's no enhancement that you can do here because there is enhancement, but it's not enough because there's just not enough data in there. There aren't enough in the way of deep, small, tiny pixels to that we can pull out and see his retina more clearly. And so there is a real difficulty there in terms of going from his image to the image that we have already, but we don't have that image already. And then the quality of his image is such that it's just not a good match. I think that the conversation about the shoes, the clothes, the gait, all of those are going to be much more powerful tools than pure retinal scan.
All that said, you don't believe there is a way to enhance it sufficiently to get a retinal comparison, and even if you could enhance it sufficiently to do that, we don't have anything to compare it to.
There's no target.
So,
there's no target.
Technical legal term they may not use at Northwestern, we're screwed. Okay, given that, we'll move forward with the evidence we do have. If you know or think you know anything regarding the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, please dial toll-free 800-225-5324, or if you wish to remain anonymous, 520-882-7463. There is a $1.2+ million reward for information leading to the whereabouts of Nancy Guthrie. No conviction, no arrest required for you to get $1.2+ million in reward. Thank you to our guests, but especially to you for being with us tonight and helping us keep the search for Nancy Guthrie